The federal government is consistently ruling by decree. Joe Biden is defying the legislative branch and the judicial. He is now trying to implement a forced medical procedure on the entirety of the population through coercive means, meaning if you work at a company with at least 100 employees, they must force you to undergo this treatment. We're now seeing the rise of the freedom flu. Apparently, people are calling in sick. It may not be coordinated. But if I were to tell you that a civil war is possible, perhaps many of you would say, yeah, at this point, I kind of agree with you, Tim. Even though a couple of years ago, many of you probably said no. In fact, many of you probably still say no. What if I were to tell you that Democrats may send U.S. Marshals to arrest Steve Bannon for organizing a legal rally or being part of a legal rally, helping to organize on January 6th? Not any insurrection or storming of the Capitol, but they're demanding he testify, and Bannon has said no. They're now threatening to send U.S. Marshals to arrest this man. Yes. If I were to tell you all of those things I do with the collapsing economy, the failures in Afghanistan, the massive outrage against Democrats and Joe Biden, his faltering approval rating, and then say that we are looking at a civil war, perhaps you might say it's a right-wing fever dream. Is it? What if I could show you this? From MSNBC. Is another civil war really possible in America? From Mehdi Hassan, where he has on two individuals to discuss that, yes, it is. They mention what precipitated the first civil war in this country, a disputed election. And then the South saying, yeah, we don't play that. We're out. And what about this from Salon? An article, What Lies Ahead? After the damage of the Trump era, can America avoid disaster? Historian Jack Goldstone saw this all coming 30 years ago. He says America's failure is pushing us off the cliff. My friends, when they start sending law enforcement to round up political figures, just listen to their own words in Venezuela. The arrest of the opposition leader is anti-democratic in Russia. Vladimir Putin going after his rival. Now what do we have? Steve Bannon? What did he do? They want him to testify. That's on the Marshals to round him up. People on Twitter are saying, arrest him. They're foaming at the mouth, demanding the arrest. You know what? The same is true of people on the right for, say, I don't know, Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. So it's not about whether you're right or not. It's about the fact that I think it's fair to say both you and I can recognize why Joe Biden should be impeached over the Ukraine scandal that continually gets worse. And the left is adamant that Steve Bannon and Trump and everybody else should be arrested, even though there's no evidence. That's what I love. And you don't worry, my friends. We live in reality. You know how I know? Because the Mueller probe found nothing. And while there were some questionable things being done, for the most part, we all actually covered in great detail what was going on with Russiagate. Nothing. And now we know that the lies about Donald Trump and the call to Ukraine were actually about Joe Biden's corruption. And the system is protecting this man. So how can we accept the status quo at this point, which is our government being run by corrupt and evil people? They probably said the same thing about Donald Trump. I suppose the difference is you and I are less trusting, and less agreeable, meaning we need a bit more evidence before we can make a conclusion. It's not everybody on the right. Certainly, it's not everybody who's a moderate. There are many people on the right who just blindly believe it. But I think those of us that are kind of in the middle, kind of regular individuals, and there's an overlap now with people on the right, we can recognize the lies from the mainstream media. And when they actually say they're going to send people out to make arrests of their political rivals, I hope you've been paying attention. You see, there may be somebody who comes forward and says, I've not watched very many of Tim Pool's videos. This is crazy. This stuff never going to happen. I'll throw it back to when we had Ryan Long on the show last time on Timcast IRL. Good friend. Ryan's great. We're doing an event with him on October 23rd in West Virginia. And when the show started, he says, Tim, when I was on the show last time, you got me all worked up saying a civil war was coming, and I was leaving here all freaked out. It's kind of I didn't expect it. You know, we do warm-ups for the show, like before, as we're setting up, we're talking and stuff, and he hadn't brought anything up about it. I assumed he, just understood what I was saying. But yeah, Ryan was like, so what happened? I thought there was going to be a civil war, and I just went, on January 6th, 1,000 Trump supporters stormed into the Capitol, shutting down the Electoral College vote process. We also had a shootout. A man was shot twice in the chest in Portland. Since then, we've seen several more shootouts. And that's not even the half of it. In fact, that's just one grain of sand in the chaos that's arisen. And Ryan's response was like, oh, yeah. Same thing happened with Russell Brand. Now, Russell Brand was just like, you've talked about civil war. And I said, let me break it down for you. Rising, an escalation of street violence, the expansion of the culture war to the highest levels of government, the big tech companies suppressing hard proof of the Biden family corruption. Then you get shootouts, storming of the Capitol. Come on. Now it's not over. And it's not going to be over because no one will back down. The authoritarians, the Democrats, are adamant they must seize power and they will crush you to get it. And they use the media to manipulate people, saying that the right are all authoritarians when the right couldn't unify to save its own political party. Republicans don't count. They're establishment shills who just do nothing. But they say it's the right. They're the authoritarians. When in fact, most people on the right are saying live and let live. Typically a liberal position. Not anymore with the left, Now it's the conservatives. Yeah, I think we're heading in that direction because everything is escalating. Namely, this story shows us the escalation. There's no sign of abatement. There's no reason for me to believe escalation will stop. If maybe the Democrats came out and said, we're not interested in pursuing the subpoenas at this time. We don't want to make things worse in this country. And it's time we find some common ground and start focusing on, the true threats America faces. I'd be like, wow, that is a good sign of some de-escalation. But we don't get that. We get people on Twitter just bashing their faces on the table. Arrest him. Here we go. CNN reports Trump ally Steve Bannon's game of chicken with the House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol Hill riot is on the cusp of entering a new and critical phase Thursday as he faces his last chance to reverse course and comply with the panel's subpoena before lawmakers likely move to seek criminal charges. Bannon's lawyer on Wednesday wrote a letter to the panel saying that his client will not provide testimony or documents until the committee reaches an agreement with former President Donald Trump over executive privilege or a court weighs in on the matter. That is an issue between the committee and President Trump's counsel, and Mr. Bannon is not required to respond at this time. Attorney Robert Costello wrote. The letter doubled down on previous instances in which the former White House advisor made it clear he has no intention of appearing for a deposition Thursday, as ordered by the committee, and essentially dared lawmakers to sue or hold him in criminal contempt earlier this month in response to the subpoena. If Bannon is a no-show, the committee is expected to immediately begin seeking a referral for criminal contempt after the subpoena deadline passes, essentially making an example of Bannon's noncompliance as the House seeks more witnesses, sources familiar with the planning told CNN. Good for you, Bannon. Bravo. That is conviction. Willing to be arrested for what he believes in. Mad respect. We're in trouble. I can't tell you how much trouble we're in. I think you either know it or you don't. They will arrest Steve Bannon. They are saying that their power is absolute. We're in trouble. They say while it could take some time before the House sends such a referral to the Department of Justice, the committee could take initial steps within hours of the panel's stated deadline, which is Thursday. If Bannon refuses to cooperate, the source is added, underscoring a growing sense of urgency around the investigation itself. CNN reported Wednesday that the committee is unified in its plan to seek criminal charges against those who refuse to comply, and lawmakers have specifically honed in on Bannon while discussing the option publicly. The reason why some of these witnesses, people like Steve Bannon, who have been public about their contempt for Congress, feel they can get away with it, is for 4 years they did. Adam Schiff told MSNBC on Wednesday. Of course, most of you know Adam Schiff as the man who lies through his teeth all day and every day. These people are evil. I don't like using that word. I try to be rather philosophical and pragmatic in my approach to understanding what evil is. I'll tell you what it is. It is the idea that life doesn't matter. It is the idea that your whims supersede natural law. Big fan of the movie Doctor Strange. Absolutely. I did find Mordo to be a bit obstinate, but I did agree with some of what he was saying. You see, we have rights. They're inalienable. And we have to play within certain rules if we want to have a system function. It's not so simple as just to say natural law, but what I mean by that is the rights inherent to creatures, to life, to liberty, the pursuit of happiness. I believe that the one of the core functions, if not the essential function of life, is effectively like negative entropy, organizing as disorganization emerges all around it. That means, quite simply, our goal is to build, to create, to inspire, to formulate, to organize energy into more complex systems, resisting the entropy that will eventually engulf us. I see that as what life does, and I think it's as what life should do. And then I think about how this translates to the human experience. That is, having children is a good thing, raising them, making them strong and successful, preserving life, finding ways to improve and protect our environment. All of these things are considered good. Why? Because they help life. And hurting life is considered the universal bad. When I see people like Adam Schiff, and to some degrees even people like Trump, but Trump I think falls on one side versus Adam Schiff on the other. I see people who are willing to lie, cheat, and steal to subvert the will of an individual to place themselves above other life. And then I see that as evil, and to varying degrees. It's one thing if someone has to make a hard choice and say, look, if this person doesn't do what this thing, they could get hurt, so I have to tell them or scare them. I'm not a fan of the deception. But I can understand some of it. Adam Schiff is just out for himself. He is a very, very evil person. It is all about just him. You can say similar things about Trump. I'm not here to defend the man. I think Trump had a lot of problems, but I think Trump really did want to help this country. He's just a bad avatar. Right? He was the avatar of anger for many people who wanted honor, integrity, dignity, and preservation of the country and our way of life and things like that. And what I mean by that is look at what we have accomplished over the past several decades. We've banned blockbusting and things like redlining. Still happens, but we've made it illegal because we're working towards getting rid of it. We've improved civil rights dramatically. The Supreme Court has ruled allowing gay marriage. We've definitely found that position where we respect the individual liberties. These people seek to absolutely destroy it. Now, we are watching them take a sledgehammer to all of the institutions that have kept us free and helped life flourish. The left will tell you that capitalism is evil. They're insane. They're just not, well, that's not fair. They're extremely ignorant. They're naive. They don't know what capitalism means. You see, one thing that the establishment left has done effectively is convince people that capitalism is only corporatism. Many on the right feel similarly of corporatism when they talk about communism. And the reality is corporate corruption is a bad thing no matter what. Who's happy with these massive major pharmaceutical companies, or any of these big tech companies? But people are willing to overlook things that benefit them. The reality is free markets are a good thing. Support programs and government assistance are also good things, so long as the systems can be held accountable and ended when they go bad. Now, we have the lucrative merger of corporation and state, something dramatically different, something that the left is absolutely angry about and the right is angry about as well. Yet for their lack of a shared definition, they're fighting with each other. And for it, the Schiffs of the world, the Pelosi's, gain more power. The McConnells, the Grahams. I'm sick of it. They go on to say, quote, "He would never be prosecuted by the Trump Justice Department, but those days are over. And I view that not only as essential to our investigation, but I also view this, the enforcement of the rule of law, as an early test of whether our democracy is recovering," the California Democrat added. California, of course, which has been actively defying federal law for decades, if not longer. They're a sanctuary state. The law doesn't apply to them, they say. Meanwhile, you also get people like Nancy Pelosi not wearing a mask. The law doesn't apply to her. You also get Gavin Newsom not wearing a mask, going out to eat. The law doesn't apply to him. When they come out and tell you the rule of law must be protected, and these are some of the people who absolutely defy the rule of law or rule by edict. These are evil, evil people. CNN legal analyst Norm Elson swiftly pushed back on Costello's letter Wednesday, saying it's just wrong. The letter quotes a case saying the president can make executive privilege determinations, but Trump is no longer the president. In the U.S., we only have one of those at a time. He is Joe Biden, and he has not asserted privilege here. 3 other Trump allies also face subpoena deadlines this week, 2 of them. Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and former admin official, Kash Patel, have been engaging with the committee, according to the panel, though it remains unclear if that contact amounts to any form of cooperation. Patel is not expected to appear for this scheduled deposition with the committee on Thursday. Multiple sources familiar with the plans tell CNN, oh, you know what? I'd totally do it. I'd absolutely go and speak. And that way I get to look Adam Schiff in the eye and just say, you are an evil, evil man. You are as evil can be described. Next question. So what do you know about X, Y, and Z? Yes. You're evil. You're a very evil person. Actually, to be fair, I would use the opportunity to talk about Joe Biden, Ukraine, and all that stuff. And then they can instruct you to answer whatever questions they want. And you just plead the fifth or whatever. I don't know if that applies necessarily here in this circumstance, but I understand Steve Bannon standing up and saying, I won't do it. But I think there's an opportunity, at least, in just sitting down and saying, yes, well, you see, it all started when I saw this video on Twitter of Joe Biden threatening to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid unless a prosecutor got fired, a prosecutor who happened to be investigating a company where his son worked, or I'm sorry, investigating the CEO and founder of the company where his son was a board member. And when they try and interrupt you, you'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm answering your question. Well, I got to give you the full context, right? Right. So it turns out Joe Biden actually shared a bank account with his son and they used the money interchangeably, which would imply, of course, that Joe Biden was receiving kickbacks from, these companies and was using his son as a proxy to take money for him while he was in government. I'm sorry. What was that? Well, yes. Matt Taibbi reported this. Well, I'm answering the question if you'll let me finish. Do it. Throw it in their faces. They're going to say, the committee was able only recently to serve Trump's former deputy chief of staff, Dan Scavino, a subpoena, a source familiar with the matter told CNN, and his deadline to appear for a deposition has likely been delayed. As to whether Meadows and Patel will appear before the panel for their depositions later this week, committee member Rep. Stephanie Murphy, a Florida Democrat, said, my expectation is that they will do the patriotic thing and appear before the committee. And if they don't have anything to hide, there's no reason why they don't show up. I'll tell you this. There may be good reason to sit there and just say whatever you want to them, but maybe it's pointless. It'll be a closed-door session, I'd imagine. In which case, Steve Bannon's right to say screw off. I ain't saying nothing. But they'll arrest the man for it. This is where we're going. Even MSNBC recognizes running a segment, is another civil war really possible in America? It is. Why is the GOP so anti-science? You know what? Don't care about the GOP. I can't stand the Republican Party. There's a small handful, and I think most people, even Trump supporters, agree. The Republicans are morons, and they suck. And there's a handful of people who ran as Republicans because that's how you win. There's a handful of people who are Democrats who aren't really Democrats and ran. That's how you win. Bernie Sanders tried it. Yeah, the GOP is trash. A handful are good. The Democratic Party is trash. Less are good. They're just establishment shills. Even Bernie Sanders becomes an establishment shill. At the very least, Rand Paul isn't. Rand Paul just throws it all in their faces. That I can respect. Yet people keep voting for McConnell and Lindsey Graham, and they keep voting for, McCarthy. I love it. I especially love, over on Wikipedia, they're trying to smear me as right-wing, far right, in fact. It's the best. And then in this article that was smearing me, claiming that I've donated to multiple Republicans, they said the word multiple. I have donated max contributions to 2 Republicans. It was Billy Prempe and Sean Parnell, and then 4 Democrats, which is Agatha Basilar, a progressive leftist running against Pelosi, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, a moderate Democrat running against who ran against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Tulsi Gabbard, and Andrew Yang. I made donations to all of them. More Democrats than Republicans. It's almost like I put my money where my mouth is, or it's almost like I actually donated to these people irrespective to anything I was talking about at the time. Sorry, I'm not right-wing and I'm not conservative. I'm center-left, which explains why some Republicans get donations from me, but typically more Democrats did. At this point, though, the Democratic Party is such utter garbage, I'll never go near it. I'll tell you what, the moment the Mises guys or Dave Smith announce they'll be getting a max contribution. Maybe we need to set up, Michael Malice PAC, and we can just dump money into running ads that are funny and challenge the establishment and just throw it all back in these people's faces. I suppose the one benefit to the establishment Republicans and the uniparty, really, the Democrats and the Republicans holding hands behind our backs, is that it prevents some kind of complete and absolute fallout from this country. But let's be real. The American people are tired of being gutted. They're tired of being beaten. They're tired of being pushed around. It doesn't matter if you're a left or right-wing populist when you're saying for the people, by the people. These people have had enough. Now, I'm just so sick of these leftists constantly defending the establishment. Donald Trump is not the establishment. He's the human Molotov cocktail. So saith Michael Moore. And I can see why there was room to get behind him. But the establishment pushes the lies and the smears, and Bernie Sanders walks in lockstep with the uniparty. It's sad that these young people just don't have the experience to know what's happening. Maybe when they're older, something will change. I don't care if the person who wins is a left or right-wing populist for the most part. Steve Bannon said he was far right on my show. And then he said tax the rich. And I said, Steve, that's a left-wing position. And he's like, whatever, I'm a populist. I don't know. Yeah, it's about the people. Now, you can be a populist and still think people are dumb. And there's many people who are dumb. As George Carlin said, think about how stupid the average person is. Now realize half of them are stupider than that. But it doesn't mean it doesn't mean you want stupid people ruling things. There can still be meritocracy. Elitism is arbitrary power granted for the elites or rule and benefit of the elites. I'm not a fan. No. The country should function for the benefit of the people. And true leaders do their jobs for the betterment of the people. We don't have that. We don't have a political class anymore. We have an exploitation class. They're vampires. They're parasites sucking off the hard work of the American people. I wish the left and the right could finally wake up to something like that, but I think the young people on the left are too wrapped up in the propaganda. There certainly are the propagandized right, but I think the moderate people who help, and the independents can see through the BS. I just don't know how you form that coalition. It's difficult. It's difficult when people believe completely different things. If they actually arrest Steve Bannon, I just hope you're paying attention because it's a slippery slope. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.